What is cannabis? Why is it illegal?
It's just a plant. It just grows like that. And if you should happen to set it on fire, there are some effects. But that's not the same as drugs. Drugs, you got to do shit to it chemically. You got to add baking soda, water, stir it up. I don't know the recipe, I'm just saying.
Can cannabis directly affect our mental health? Or is it simply the media's portrayal?
The more you mess with cannabis, the more it can mess with your mind.
Cannabis is pretty harmless. Plenty of people smoke it and it doesn't cause any harm to the majority of the population.
If the World Health Organization is keeping quiet about the truth about cannabis, what's going on? Too much suffering going on. Cannabis people are being persecuted for using a substance that's less harmful to them than alcohol or tobacco. And that's wrong. It has to be wrong.
The government is dealing with drug abuse. Mm-hmm. They're trying to criminalise it rather than actually help people.
Yeah. I don't agree with it at all. Yeah, they are criminalising it, and no, I don't think it's the way to deal with it. You mentioned drug use to Joe Bloggs on the street up there, and he will think that what a waste of money, what a waste of NHS money. Mm-hmm. Why are you dealing with these people? You know, put them all in prison. Don't let them on the streets. You know, that's wrong. And yet you could be an alcoholic and someone will be, oh, bless you, that's awful, let's help you, you know.
But how dangerous is it in comparison with cannabis and harder drugs? You would expect the illegal drugs to be more harmful.
In 1998, the World Health Organization covered up the report of this Dr. Taskett from California and didn't publicise the fact that cannabis was less harmful to health than alcohol or tobacco. And so now we have Professor David Nutt, who's saying exactly the same thing and is sacked for saying the same thing. 12 years, the politicians have been denying the medical evidence.
Alcohol is considered a socially accepted drug in the UK and around the world. We all know the consequences to drinking. Almost every organ in the body can be negatively affected by alcohol. But surely, drugs are worse for us than alcohol. Otherwise, why would they be illegal?
Alcohol is more damaging than heroin or crack. It kills more people than heroin does, and that's a fact. It's the one drug that is socially acceptable.
It is argued that cannabis causes psychotic illness, and this was the main reason why cannabis was reclassified in 2008 back up to a Class B. You
know, that it's dependent on so many different things. It'll depend on their upbringing, you know, anything that's happened in their childhood, social skills, you know, the people they're mixing with.
The amount of people using cannabis in the past 30, 40 years has risen from a few hundred in the 1960s to over 3 million now. And there's been no rise in the amount of people suffering from psychosis and schizophrenia. Where's the link? 3 million people, according to government figures, really believe that is false. That it isn't harmful because they've used it, that they're not suffering from psychosis and schizophrenia.
An article published in The New Scientist in January 2010 by Amanda Fielding and Paul Morrison argues that it is the lack of balance within cannabis that causes harm to people. Cannabis has indeed changed over the years. Nowadays, skunk contains a high level of THC, a psychoactive compound.
The super skunks and all that kind of thing coming out, that lots of our clients talk about, that lots of them love, and of course that they've got a really high THC.
It is the disappearance of CBD that is causing a risk in developing psychosis.
I haven't seen any evidence myself, the people I see, of it making their mental health issues worse.
The presence of CBD counteracts the effects of THC, but when unopposed, THC is hazardous to our mental health.
It needs to be regulated. There needs to be a 50-50 THC-CBD mix, really.
Other people in the service, where they say it's made the situation worse, but it's not proven.
Only in a regulated market can cannabis become safe to the user by creating strains with a balance of THC and CBD. Cannabis smokers will be getting a safe, regulated supply, just in the same way we go to the pub and have a drink.
The quality of the alcohol produced in the United States during that period killed thousands of people, and the quality of cannabis deteriorates with prohibition. When cannabis is grown by the person that smokes it, he knows that cannabis is good quality and is not contaminated in any way, shape or form. That's what happened when cannabis was contaminated recently in the past couple of years with a little grit and bits of plastic. And just because a person smokes something shouldn't make him or her a criminal.
Getting arrested for possession is such a trivial offence. It is a waste of resources and taxpayers' money. It is a waste of police time and unnecessarily limits the individual convicted.
It shouldn't be prohibited. The use of it shouldn't be prohibited. If you get caught for using cannabis, right, you lose your job. If you're married, you lose your wife, and you lose your house, and you lose your family, and you end up on the street in the gutter. There are cannabis smokers and users in every single profession, but if they get caught, they lose the job.
The government would have to educate people on how to use cannabis the most beneficial way.
Personally, I just think education is the key. Education from the word go is the key.
For example, vaporisers cut out the tobacco and paper inhaled.
Yes, you have choices, and yes, this is available to you, but just be aware of the actual dangers of that substance and what it can lead to.
As people's beliefs and their cultures change, the laws should change accordingly.
There's no harm in using a substance that's culturally acceptable in various parts of the planet.
This can be seen throughout history with laws on abortion, gay marriage and euthanasia. The
solving of the problem is decriminalisation and proper management of drugs.
Can we still justify punishing people for using a plant when the outcome doesn't benefit the individual or society?
We are managed, we are socially engineered to do what our leaders tell us to do in the laws that they create. Some laws are good and some laws are bad, but let's face it, it appears that the law on cannabis is probably the worst of all.
When it comes to cannabis, people use it as a way of life, to relax or have fun, just like drinking a pint of lager at the weekend. They are not addicts or drug abusers and should not be categorised as so.
It's wrong for them to control the people in any way, shape or form if the people aren't actually harming other people.
Why is marijuana against the law? It grows naturally upon our planet. Doesn't the idea of making nature against the law seem to you a bit paranoid? You know what I mean? It's nature. How do you make nature against the fucking law? Grows everywhere, serves 1,000 different functions, all of them positive.
Cannabis is not only used for recreational and medicinal purposes. The male plant, otherwise known as hemp, also has many uses.
Cars can be made out of hemp, ships can be made out of hemp, planes can be made out of hemp, houses can be made out of hemp, furniture can be made out of hemp. You name it, anything really.
Cannabis and hemp have become merged in their meaning, but these plants are two very different things. We are constantly being told that global warming is becoming a dangerous threat to the environment, but we continue to use harmful fuels.
Hemp will be a major contributor to the reversing of the effects of climate change.
Hemp is a potential alternative for not only energy sources, but a wide range of products. The government is dealing with this problem by proposing we install wind turbines around the country, produce electric cars for everyone, drive 5 miles less a week and recycle your plastics.
Plastics can be made out of hemp instead of oil.
First of all, wind turbines are extremely expensive for the taxpayer and create a minimal amount of jobs.
The UK government say 6,000 wind farms need to be established in and around the UK in order to create the energy needed to sustain our population and lower our carbon footprint. The 140 turbines near Glasgow is the largest wind farm in Europe. It will produce enough electricity to power 250,000 homes. It cost £300 million and created 300 jobs. Right?
A better solution is needed, one which will boost our country out of recession and begin to tackle climate change head on.
So we need to have something, and the best thing we can have is a plant that's globally mass-produced and processed and used for its resources. Every bit of clothing that people wear, instead of being cotton, which is sprayed with radioactive pesticides, carries a high carbon footprint in its transportation.
There are major disadvantages to electric cars and aren't as emission-free as first thought.
You've either got gas energy or coal energy being produced from the power station. So that's going to increase the amount of energy that you've got to actually produce. So therefore that's going to raise the carbon footprint of the energy sector anyway.
Hemp seeds are ideal for making ethanol, the cleanest burning liquid bio alternative to gasoline. And when grown as an energy crop, hemp actually offsets carbon emissions because it absorbs more carbon dioxide than any other plant.
In a nutshell, hemp is in direct competition with the oil industry because it can be converted into fuel.
Hemp is very cheap to grow and produced as it can be grown on any kind of soil.
They were having problems with soil erosion in Australia in the 90s, and they're probably still having problems with soil erosion. And hemp, it would nourish the soil with the root system and the leaf droppings and prevent soil erosion. So the ideal solution is to have your cars driven with ethanol fuel. And Henry Ford in 1942 actually created an ethanol distillery plant and a car whose bodywork was made out of hemp. They acknowledge that trees take carbon out of the atmosphere, so we'll plant more trees.
Instead of destroying rainforests, hemp has 3 times more cellulose than wood, creates paper that yields 4 times as much pulp as trees.
The fact of the matter is, it's better to plant thousands and thousands of hemp plants than thousands of trees, because it takes 60 years for a tree to grow and 1 year for a cannabis plant to grow, or 6 months really, the most.
Hemp has all these benefits to our environment, the economy and our health.
None of them have replied, and none of them will talk about it in this election.
Why has the government not put funding into the hemp industry?
And the government refuses to acknowledge that we've got to grow plants. Paul Tilsley, like I said, is the deputy leader of Birmingham City Council, and I went up to him and I said, there's some land on our housing estate. Is there any chance that we could build some low carbon capture hemp houses instead of conventional houses on the estate? And he leant forward and whispered in my ear, no chance.
One plant has so much to offer us, and with the rising threat of oil running out and global warming, the government needs to seriously consider creating the hemp industry.
But the main concern for me at the moment is the potential thought that the day after tomorrow could literally be the day after tomorrow.
I'll tell you something else. I know this is not a very popular idea. You don't hear it very often anymore, but it's the truth. I have taken drugs before, and I had a real good time. Sorry. Didn't murder anybody, didn't rob anybody, didn't rape anybody, didn't beat anybody, didn't lose one fucking job, laughed my ass off, and went about my day.